Hi everyone, thanks for joining. And it's Sunday evening almost, so that pop-up will come again and again. So I have to jump back to allow them to join. So this is the second chapter of series Journey to Stars. Okay, so as you remember, last time we had a discussion around certifications and how to start. So in case you have missed that, I'll share the link for that video in the feedback email. But now, first, let me welcome our special guest, Robert. How are you, man?
Ah, man, I am so good. I gotta say, I'm super honored that you asked me to join this, and for all of you guys overseas in your evenings, I just want to say namaste, namaskar, namaskar, namaskaram, namaste, assalamu alaikum, and I'm gonna butcher this one. Vanakkam,
Vanakkam. Yeah.
vanakkam.
So, firstly, thanks for giving us the opportunity to learn from you, man. It's our pleasure that you are here. Let me allow these folks. Okay, so someone else is left. So, okay, I'll keep a check on them. Luciano is also joining.
Do you want me to just go ahead with an intro while you're still admitting guests?
Yeah, man. So I don't want to leave this opportunity, right? So the way you start in your Titan series, so let's start from the start. Okay, so where did you get your start in ServiceNow?
Thanks. Well, I joke around and tell people that I was born 12 years ago. Before that, I worked in the ITSM tool space, working with primitive tools that were similar to ServiceNow, but I was just like some boring kid, basically. I put in my work day, and then I went home and did absolutely nothing. I had little to no ambition. But something about when I first got my hands on ServiceNow really changed that. Like, I kind of always knew that I was only going to go so far dealing with ITSM tools, um, and especially with the state of the ITSM tools on the market. But then we evaluated ServiceNow, and I suddenly realized I had a much more powerful tool, and I could influence the business a lot more. I could put my mark on the bottom line a lot more than with the tools I was previously operating with. So that was like 12 years ago, maybe a bit more. We were ServiceNow's first like gigantic customer, and since then, I've just really tried to put my heart and soul into the tool that's kind of given my life meaning. And so in that time, I've ranked up in the community. I'm number 14 now. Um, I've been a community MVP 5 times as of this year. I'm in the new Dev MVP program. I've spoken at Knowledge seven or 8 times. I've won a few hackathons, um, but it's all just because I didn't have a whole lot of meaning before, and I have a lot of meaning now. And so, however else I can help other people just coming on, that's what I want to do.
So that is the best part of ServiceNow community. I mean, the people I know in the community who are at certain good level, I mean, in the community as well, or they are the developer MVP, they never say no to help. I mean, I've seen other communities as well, but this is by far the best experience that I'm having over here. So here I have missed something, right? You are saying you are 5 times community MVP. I got this. I got
Okay,
this.
the numbers kind of blend together after a while.
I got this from your mail list, yeah.
Yeah,
You might want to update that.
that's okay. Really, like, I mean, I say those things, but I really am just some guy, right? Like, I'm not, my only advantage is that I got into this 12 years ago, right? That's the only advantage I have. I am not some genius developer. I'm not some genius process person. I've just been at the game for 12 years, and I have a big mouth that doesn't stop talking.
That's That's what I was exactly looking. What a great introduction, man. So before starting, this is for the audience. Okay, so I have divided this session in three parts. First thing, based on your registration, while you register, based on your expectations, I have figured out four, five, most probably six questions to be asked from Robert. That would cover the almost say 80 to 90% of the expectations. If your question is not answered, once we are done with those questions, then I'll open the session for uh, open Q&A, just like we had the last time. So you can one to one directly ask your questions from Robert, or if I would be in a position, I would answer, but I'll make sure that Robert answers the most. After the session, I'll share in feedback email. So the importance of feedback, other than
Okay.
we getting a rating, would be selecting a topic for the next session as well. So we will
ஆமா
definitely look for that.
நான் ஒரு மீட்டிங்ல இருக்கேன் நானு உங்களுக்கு ஒரு
So Robert, let's me start. While registering, lots of folks were interested in knowing what is Vivid Chart is basically about. I mean, they are quite happy, they are quite motivated when I shared those certificate on Vivid Charts. I really like the app, but it would be great if you can give us a go through that app through Vivid Chart basically.
Yeah, I'm not anticipating screen sharing. Do you just want to pitch, or do you want me to demonstrate it?
If you want to share, that would be great.
Let me think about this. My pitch about Vivid Charts is okay. Give me 2 seconds. I wasn't anticipating screen sharing, so I'm just going to set this up super fast.
No problem. So in case you don't want to share screen, we are totally okay with that. Till then, I'll just allow the people to join in, the latecomers.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, I'm not going to go through the full deck, but when we're talking about ServiceNow reporting, I like to think of the whole reporting world as revolving around three personas. The first persona is the operator persona, and I think we've all sat in the operator seat. They're just the people who have to get stuff done. And what I need as an operator from a reporting perspective is really simple. Really simple. Tell me what I need to do, and tell me what I should do next. And if you want to get this list of stuff done, like, I don't care about the patterns that I can exploit or the exceptions that I have to reconcile. For me, it's just what work do I have? How fast can I do it? Or rather, what work do I have? What should I do next? Okay, then we have a level of people called the analysts, and the analysts are the people who are there to figure out, hey, what are the patterns that we can exploit or anticipate? What are the exceptions that we have to reconcile? And the tools they need are a lot more complex, because I have to take an existing set of data that we haven't determined the story out of and do all kinds of analysis on it. And this is where people get either really deep into the base reporting module and or performance analytics. Now, we've just covered everything that ServiceNow can do, but we've left out one persona, and that persona is the stakeholder. Okay, and the stakeholder can be basically anybody, but more typically we're talking about senior levels of leadership. And those people are under-tooled. They want to be told the story. They don't want to be provided an analyst's interface in which to determine the story themselves. Like, if I'm a CIO and I tell you, go figure out why it's so expensive for us to do asset refreshes every quarter, I don't want to have to figure that out myself. I want you to figure it out. And then don't come back to me with an analyst interface. Give me the story. And this is why people take tons of data out of their ServiceNow systems. So I'll skip right to that. And for those of you who worked in ServiceNow for any amount of time, tell me, would it surprise you if I said that the more important the report, the more strategic the audience, the less likely that report is to be in ServiceNow? And everybody's probably giggling a little bit because it's absolutely true. ServiceNow is not the tool we report out of. We constantly export our data to the extent of, 55% of the ServiceNow community has told us that over half their reports are outside of ServiceNow. And they've told us that 74 hours a month are spent doing that, taking the data out of ServiceNow and manipulating outside of ServiceNow so that I can quote unquote make a report. But why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it so they can get better formulas and calculations in Excel, like the kinds of stuff you get in Excel. How much value has the service desk provided me? Why don't we just multiply our service desk tickets by whatever cost model we're using, multiply this column by this value? They need slide deck experiences because they typically present to their senior leadership in something like PowerPoint or Google Slides. They need better aesthetic control, and meaning like I need like Vivid Charts colors and Vivid Charts fonts. I want my presentations to be about my brand. And better distribution, because we've all seen reports in ServiceNow that I can build the report, but it's hard to get it in front of the audience. And these are the problems that Vivid Charts has been built to solve. And the punchline to my fuller presentation is that you're not looking at PowerPoint. You're not looking at Google Slides. This is you're looking at a Vivid Charts ServiceNow implementation. And so when I say something like 57% of people say this, I didn't write 57%. That is the data on the platform. Okay? So it keeps the data super reliable. And if I'll just finish up my kind of like what is Vivid Charts by going to vividcharts.com dashboards home. And these are the kinds of aesthetic level of control we can put on different reports. And I'll wrap this up by saying, for those of you who have worked with the CMDB and had to interact with the business on it, like you don't go to the business and say, hey, we have like all these duplicate stale and CI, it's duplicate stale and orphan CIs. They'll say, so what? What's a CI? But if you can express it in terms of dollar values, right? Duplicate CIs cost us this, stale CIs cost us this, orphan CIs cost us this. I de facto have a common language with the customer. And to get just this out of ServiceNow is a real chore. I can't get like multiples. I can't multiply one column by one cost in a standard report, right? It's not easily reached. So better formulation, better aesthetic control, better slide deck experiences, and better distribution on the ServiceNow platform is what Vivid Charts is all about. So I hope I didn't take too much time on that.
No, that's fine. So I have few queries. So first thing, is it based out of Service Portal itself?
Yeah, it's made on ServiceNow with ServiceNow components. Ultimately, the visualizations are Service Portal objects. So I guess that's a yes.
And the best thing that while I was studying Vivid Chart, so one was that loop thing. So if you can just show us that. I mean, that is what my clients were looking for. The kind of experience that we can give to them. And other than that, can you tell us about the how to learn? I mean, Vivid Charts is a separate application.
Yeah. Can I make just a quick suggestion? I can go into this more specifics about Vivid Charts at the end of the main presentation and talk about that as long as you want. But I think everybody came with the idea that they were going to talk about ITBM, so I want to make sure everybody's satisfied before we proceed to that. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so let's move to ITBM related questions. So first question that I guess 70 or 80 folks have asked that, we want to start learning ITBM. So what should be the ideal or recommended path that you would that would be great to start with ITBM? Maybe some training manuals or something. What would you recommend?
Okay. My first ITBM job was a surprise. I was working for a customer. So I was working for a consulting agency. We were kind of desperate for work, and like a friend of a friend put us in contact with a PMO. They were implementing ITBM. They weren't satisfied with their current partner. And I talked to them for a while. I showed them what I did know about ITBM, and they said, great, you're hired. And and I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting them to say, oh, thanks for the submission, but we're going to go with this other expert. So I had to learn ITBM the hard way, meaning very short interval to train on it, and no real help. So I went around begging the experts I knew to give me an hour of time here, an hour of time there. And then I spent many, many sleepless nights deconstructing this on my own so that I can get to the job and kind of learn on the spot. What I wish for you is that you don't have to feel that, right? Especially any of you who are parents, like you're talking about staying up super late at night and then waking up tired and your kids want to play with you and you're just like, God, I still got to learn ITBM. Don't do it my way. The best way, if I could do it over again and I had enough runway, I would thoroughly, completely, and without hesitation, take the Servicenow paid for course. Now, I don't know the financial impact of like what a course means in Indian monetary value. I do know in the US it's not trivial. Like it's an expensive. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you in, but the trainings for APM and PPM are currently free on the Now Learning platform.
Well, shoot, man. There you go. Capitalize on that. Yeah, capitalize on that. I like, no bones about it. ServiceNow's project management course is 1,000 times better than having to deconstruct it on your own. There's some things that you just won't get until somebody explains it to you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's going to take me 10 hours to unbundle this and figure out this component, or somebody can tell me about it in an hour. And the other thing that you'll get is, especially in the realm of ITBM, there's stuff that's there that's fringe case. So part of what will make you good at ITBM is quickly learning the things that you don't really have to worry about. I'll give you a quick example. Like when you're learning resource management, you can request 3 different types of resources. You can request a resource from a group, you can request a resource that has a role, and you can request a specific user.
Yeah.
Okay? And you go into that thinking, oh man, in what ways would I use all 3, and how does all 3 work, and what are the downstream consequences of it? Who cares? 95% of the time, people are going to request from group. You know what I mean? But you never know that going in. I didn't know it going in, but I sure as hell knew it going out. So if I'd have taken the course, that hint would have been provided for me. So like just to make a long story short, if you can, like via your employer or via like if you want to be like fully committed, I'm going to be an ITBM expert, and you're willing to invest in yourself, well shoot, I mean the course is free. Take the course. take the ServiceNow course. After that, after that, I can't stress this enough either. ITBM is one of those things that you kind of constantly need to hone, more so than ITSM. Like you can almost get away living a life of ITSM implementations without ever being like an ITIL zealot, right? You can learn it on the fly. With ITBM, I feel like you need constant practice running through different project management scenarios to get good and stay good at it. And I wish I had more specifics than that, but it's a different skill in terms of acquisition and sustained sharpness than ITSM.
Okay, so one thing, so should we go on community? I mean, once we are done with the training manuals or training stuff, so would you recommend going on the community and seeing the questions? I mean, that's the approach that I follow. I mean, first I get the training, then I went to community, see the specific questions, maybe the solved ones first, then I'll try to solve. So it's kind of a practice. So would you recommend that?
I would. I do that in general anyway. So like people ask me, hey, Robert, how'd you get the way you did and whatever? I'm like, 12 years of reading the community every morning, right? That means I've had thousands of hours that other people haven't. And what getting to the community does, even if it's for like 10 minutes a day, and if you're interested in ITBM specifically, like go to the community, go to the ITBM specific subforum, and read that first page. And just click and read on the things that are interesting to you, right? And then you're going to start finding those areas that I was talking about earlier where it's okay to not know, or it's controversial to begin with, so everybody's going to be confused about it, including you, right? Or the landmines that you want to avoid because to some extent ServiceNow isn't mature in one area or another. So yes, absolutely, once you're done the course, even before you're done the course, reading the front page of the community for any knowledge area is a great way, a low friction way to get knowledge.
And are there any blogs or anything that you are following? I mean, you might be writing some.
Yeah, I haven't found many good ones on ITBM specifically. There are a few people out there that are tremendous brain trusts in this space, but they're not content creators. And so if you go onto ServiceNow community and search for posts by Kelly Kaufman, she was an early adopter and a mega advisor to ServiceNow about how to do it, but she's out of the ServiceNow space now, and so a lot of her stuff is early. I'm not sure how well it survived the different versions, but other than that, I wish there was better blogs. I'm trying to fill that gap myself and just push more ITBM content out. But I'll tell you, none of that will be useful until you have the base knowledge of either having to learn the hard way like I did and taking the course. So the blogs aren't going to give you, the blogs are only going to be gold nuggets after you have achieved a certain amount of knowledge first. Does that make sense? They are not a shortcut. They are a reward.
Exactly. So now I will use your experience. Can you tell us some pointers to keep in mind while we are in the requirement gathering phase for specific to APM or PPM requirement gathering?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a ton, and I've been trying to find ways to monetize it myself or figure out a service offering I could do, but I'm just going to give you guys a secret, okay? ITBM is different. Again, I wish I had a way to articulate this. It's different in how it deploys from ITSM. To some extent, you could do an ITSM rollout on sticky notes, right? People are used to the concepts. God, I'm not articulating this well. Let me start over. Okay. With my first ITBM job, which was very successful, I kind of came at it like I don't know what it's like to be a project manager. My 2 or 3 times I've tried to be a PM in my life haven't been successful experiences for me. So it's like I don't understand what their day-to-day is. There's very little context. So how am I going to build something with you when I know nothing about your experience? So what I told my customer is, we're all going to build a common understanding of what this does together. And I gave my customers like a week-long demo. They were interested in PPM, resource, time tracking, demand management, ideation, and not so much, well, portfolio and program, but not so much the deep financial stuff. And so I was like, great, like pull in 2 or 3 of your most opinionated people, and we're just going to run through a week-long demo. We're just going to do scenario after scenario after scenario. And that, to me, worked a lot better than traditional workshops did. Because it was easy to see where they were comfortable, so you didn't have to tread deep on that ground. But it also flushed out the problem areas. You could visibly see where people were uncomfortable. I don't like the way that works because it's different. And so that way you could lean into those moments, find out these areas which are going to be I know battle's the wrong word, but challenges. And then you come out of the week-long demo like, here's going to be our challenge areas. Here's how we're going to solution it, train it, etc. So I'd say for me, the keys to success to ITBM implementations has been front load the training. You don't even have to call it training, but you just basically call it like product familiarization. So everybody knows what they're getting into and they have a common experience language with you. The second thing is focus on scenarios. And I use scenarios in ITBM because let me think. There's things that you do in ITBM that you don't do in ITSM. Like a scenario would be, how do I create a demand? And then another scenario would be, how do I size and shape a demand? And another one would be, how do I promote a demand to a project? And then another one might be, how do I pause a project that's mid-flight? And then how do I rebuild my resource requirements when I decide to unpause that project? So I break down all the activities that you do in a demand in a project, etc., and I call those scenarios, and I spend a lot of time documenting how those work, right? So that when we go live, people have essentially a playbook. I'm not sure if you got, like, in American football, they have this thing called a playbook, and it's the thing that the coaches share with their players so that the players know when I say we're going to run red play number 2, everybody knows their positions and their unique goals. So I take that concept of the playbook and I apply it to ITBM so that I catalog all the scenarios, write out how they're actually done, and again, I have that's the map for training. I think I get the feeling I was rambling a lot there. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, man, that's totally what we were looking for. So just one quick query. Recently I was implementing PPM. So we are currently in that scenario of implementing. One of my client has asked us to, use accelerators that we are having on the store and all those things. So what's your take on using accelerators? Because I feel that every implementation is
I'm sorry.
that I don't know what we call them, accelerators that have a update set kind of thing, that is already things have been configured.
Accelerators?
Yep.
Oh,
I hate them.
Yeah. I'm going to try not to swear. I'm going to try really hard not to swear. Because this concept deserves every foul expletive in every language on earth combined. That's how fucking bad it is. Yeah, sorry, I went there. I'm not saying that never ever use accelerators ever. What I'm saying is there is so much evidence against their use. It's the only cases where you would use an accelerator in best practices is rare to non-existent. Let me tell you what I mean. I didn't go through an ITBM implementation. I had a customer that hired me on as kind of like a call me when you need me architect, right? And they were wrapping up a project implementation when I got there, and it was a train wreck. Everybody knew it was a train wreck, but they were just trying to struggle to the finish line. And one of the things that just gobsmacked me was the vendor had deployed an accelerator and hadn't even told the customer what was in it. And when I looked at the update set that had the kind of quote unquote accelerator stuff in it, like there was 2,000 updates in this thing. 2,000 items in the update set. And I went to the vendor immediately, like, tell me exactly what you deployed. Well, I mean, it's a collection of our best practices. Like, no, specifically, what have you deployed?
So did they provide you any documentation?
They couldn't. They gave me a half-hour presentation on generally the stuff that they touched. And there's been few times where I have been as pissed off as that. I can't believe in 2020, after all we've learned about ServiceNow, after all the ecosystem has learned about good software development, that we have a situation where somebody can implement 2,000 things that they don't even know about. It's like, why are you even bothering with change control and ITIL and configuration management when you also live in a world where it's somewhat okay to deploy hundreds, thousands of lines of code that you don't even know what it does? And this is the, like, let's ramp up one level of maturity. So let's take this asinine doofus vendor that deployed this awful update set, and let's ramp them up one level of maturity and say, okay, they're not asinine doofus horrible devs, they're better than that. Okay, so these people have gone and documented everything that they have in a much smaller update set. Is that okay? Well, maybe. Let's say they have 100 things in that update set, and you're nodding your head and say 50 of these things are dead on. I totally agree with this. What are you going to do with the other 50? Are you going to, like, in what world does it make sense to deploy stuff that you don't know or agree to just so that you can get to the stuff that you know or agree to? It's a ludicrous concept. And it doesn't save you any time, because sooner or later, do you guys have the expression pay the piper?
We need to revamp again. That's
Yeah,
what I
like,
told them.
in the West, we have this fairy tale called the Pied Piper, and the Pied Piper comes into a town that's infested with rats, and the town says, hey, Pied Piper, if you play your magic pipe, you can take the rats away from our town. Can you please do that? And he's like, great. So he plays his pipe, he takes the rats out of town, he comes back, he's like, where's my money? And the town's like, we don't have rats anymore, so we don't need to pay you. And so the Pied Piper comes back at night, plays his pipe, takes all the children out of town. Anyway, it's awful. It's an awful fairy tale. But everybody has to pay the piper. And so if you're paying for the stuff that you want with stuff that you don't want, that stuff is going to have to be dealt with sooner or later, sometime in the future. I went really long on that. Thank you for listening. But yeah, accelerators are, here's the conditions that I would accept an accelerator. Number one, every single line is documented. When I say line, I'm talking about update, not line of code, right? But everything that you do in that update set is documented. Everything. The second thing that must happen is that I should be able to turn these things on and off before I deploy the update set. If you have 100 things and I like 99 of them, there is no way in hell I'm going to deploy it with that one extra one. You, the vendor, have to be able to pull that out for me. And if you can satisfy those two conditions, then maybe I'll deploy that.
Exactly, man. So, what are the possible roadblockers and the strategy to overcome those so that we have a successful go live?
Yeah, we touched on these before, but it's worth hitting them again. I find the first roadblock is a lack of familiarity with ServiceNow. Okay, when you're talking about ITSM, people have been dealing with ITIL on different tools for a long time. So there's tons of process familiarity, but also a lot of let me start this over. In ITSM, people are really used to switching tools, right? It's kind of like before ServiceNow, it was like every 3 years you switch your ITSM tool. And so people were used to transitioning, right? ServiceNow has really extended the time people stay on a tool, and that's awesome. But everybody was used to it. PMOs are not. You know, they've been using, like the two places I was at, they had been using Microsoft Project for, I'm not kidding you, 20 years. You can have intelligent conversations with people who are alive, you know, in that time. So they're not used to switching tools. They're very, very used to not only their processes, but the procedures to execute those processes on the tools that they're on. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like when I want to pause a project and take the resources and put them on other projects, they know mechanically how that happens. So you're about to paradrop them into another tool where they have no idea how that happens. And furthermore, it might be a different philosophy on how that's done. People get real nervous. So the first roadblock is getting as many people familiar with what they're going to before you deploy, before you even take requirements, because they won't be able to adequately express their requirements with too little understanding of what they're going on to. Right? Your requirements will be fleshed out with greater familiarity of the endpoint. Roadblock 1, familiarity with the endpoint. Roadblock number 2, training and documentation. I don't make any secret, our industry is not good at documentation. If there's any question about whether or not a scope of work will go the distance or not, like, people will take training and documentation out to make more time for development, yada, yada, right? We've all seen that. But in terms of ITBM, remember when I was talking about the scenarios, right? You can't just like train these people on Tuesday and they come back into work on Thursday on a new tool, expecting them to take on, $50 million of in-flight projects, having been through classroom training once. They need a reference guide so that they know, hey, listen, if you're a demand manager and you need to decline a demand, or you need to make the endpoint of the demand a story instead of a project, here's how you do it. So the second roadblock is the lack of a playbook, right? We're just, as an ecosystem, we're not used to building these things. So if you can keep your customers interested in that concept, that's another great key to success. Those are the two roadblocks I think are the worst. Is just the upfront familiarity and the end state of the continuing training and familiarity program.
Okay, so if I consider my case, okay, so I have started, I have learned PPM, APM, I have gone through their trainings and everything. I have implemented it once, one implementation of APM and I guess 1.5 of PPM. So how can I accelerate my growth in ITBM space? I am one of those guys that is in the middle, that has done the initial phase, I have passed that phase. So what should I do to, grow and grow?
Yeah. I would say start building a body of knowledge of your own, okay? So you've heard me say scenarios. Write down those scenarios that you come across in an implementation and just keep them like your own body of work, just so like if you change companies, it goes with you instead of stays at the company, right? And so the next implementation you go in, like the first one you do, you deploy resource management, you learn the hard way that, hey, listen, nobody requests resources for roles or users, or they really shouldn't either. So you just say, how do I request resources? That becomes one of the scenarios that you document. And under that header, you write your own notes about, okay, listen, like tell people not to use role and user resource plans. So you're building your own library of things that you've learned. And not only does that trigger a different part of your brain and thus stay in your memory longer, but you forget this stuff. You forget, like, I went into my second ITBM thing, and I was demonstrating something, and I was like, oh yeah, that's why I don't do this part. I'd forgotten. I've forgotten how annoying or this one part was and how I have to reconcile that. So for me, there's nothing better for personal growth is to keep documenting as you do your implementations and keep practicing. What else? Oh my God. And this is the hardest one. This is for the really, really committed amongst you, is to keep doing stuff on your demo data instance. Like, keep building projects, keep updating project tasks, keep building resource plans, keep building reports, keep doing stuff, anything to keep that skill set sharp. That's a really tall order, but it's kind of what's kept me in the ITBM game.
And the best way to do that is go on community, search for the questions, solve them on your PDI, and share those screenshots.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I find it's just if you could get like every conversation I have with an ITBM person, every I haven't done an ITBM gig in a bit, but I sell Vivid Charts into the PMO, and so like every insight I get from them, I'm just going back to my ITBM library and putting my own notes in. And the best people I know, my mentors in this space, have got that like got that so fundamental that before they even go into a body of services, they have a wide range of questions that they ask, so they can even save on what I was talking about, like doing that week-long demo at the start. They've done so many of these and taking such rigorous notes and reviewed those notes afterwards that they've basically got surveys that can act as the better part of a workshop.
That's really great. So I'm done with my questions. Okay, so we'll start with people popping in. So first thing that someone has asked is Madhusudan, if I'm just pronouncing your name correct. So can you just pop in and tell us your question?
Hey Dhruv, hi Robert, this is Madhu.
I
I've been on ITBM's. Hey, I've been on ITBM space and I'm using it, actively developing on it, and for the last 6 to 8 months, what we are kind of a stable at its maturity level. What I wanted to know is how can we leverage the success packs, the now create success packs for our day-to-day ITBM stuff. Just wanted to know, is it something we can do or is it just targeted for implementation?
Um, kind of feel like my pants are around my ankles here. What's this? A customer success pack? Is that a plugin
Yes,
or is it from the store?
yes, yeah,
Yeah, I'll take on that.
sure.
Success pack. So for all the participants, ServiceNow has recently come up with Now Create. Okay, so if you want to go on the URL is nowlearning.servicenow.com/now create. So it has various documents. Let me show you if I have that thing open. Let me just go back to that screen. Let me open up my browser.
Sorry guys if I got you off guard. I mean, Dhruv, if you feel this is not too relevant, you can hold it for the end.
Oh, no, it's fine. I mean,
Okay,
let's we have started it. Let's complete it.
sure, go ahead, man.
So it will take me to the Now Create. So Now Create is basically what ServiceNow says. It's a collection of repositories or documents that you get that they have created based on the experience of their say 1,000+ implementations. So let me just get into it and I'll show you one. So
Yeah, I keep getting a full folder.
I'm using my personal email to log into that. It's not something that is partner specific. So here you have success pack. So if you go on here and choose the tool, suppose I want to go for ITBM. So here you will have foundational application. This will be updated soon, but if you go on the open the success pack, you will have documents related to every step of implementation. I mean, this is a kind of a start that you can have, and these documents are good, but they are good as long as you are in the starting phase or in the pre-sales or the initial documentation phase. They will expedite your process, but and while exporting you can choose the file format that directly to ITBM. It will create a Gantt chart or Microsoft project or to CSV. If I export it to CSV, it will have direct links.
So this looks like what Now Success was a few months
Yep.
back.
Yep.
Yeah. No. Okay. Great. So what I found I haven't looked at these ones specifically, but what I found for the Now Success packs was they were awesome. I called them I called Now Success like your virtual KPMG consultant. right? Instead of paying somebody 500, and sorry KPMG, but instead of paying like a massive high build process consultant, you can kind of like look at these documents and fill in your own blanks, like, oh, we're weak here, and then capitalize on the lessons learned. But it ain't magic, right? You got to read it, you got to ingest it, and then see what those lessons would apply. Like, you can't just, I think it's just a shortcut to learning the hard way.
Yeah. So it's a kind of documentation that developers hate, but it's something that is well prepared. You just need to use it and modify as per your thing.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so next question that we have is from Daniel. That so guys, you can also put on your questions in the chat. I'll just call Daniel now. So Daniel, can you just give us a go through your question?
Just wanted to know. Good morning, Rob. Nice to see you here. I actually came online very early in Canada.
Nice to meet you, Daniel.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. It's really early in Canada here, so I had to join really early to be part of this session. So my question is in two parts. One, do we need to have a good foundation in Microsoft Project to be really good in ITPM? That's one. And two, how do we sell ITBM to show it is really better than Microsoft Project to our customers, especially the small companies that are not really that big in maturity of their PMO?
Sure. Okay. You always have to make a distinction between adequate, good, very good, and very, very good. Okay, so you do not have to be an MS Project expert to be good or even very good at deploying ITBM successfully. That being said, every bit of knowledge of MS Project gives you more, it's a force multiplier for you, right? Because you can meet them where they're at. You'd be like, hey, you remember how difficult it is to quackity quack 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 in MS Project? Well, now in Servicenow, like, you know what I mean? You can answer your second question with your first question. If you have that MS Project familiarity, it's easier to answer the second question. Now, does anybody want to invest in MS Project to the extent to have those conversations? I don't know. Like, I talk to people who have years, decades of MS Project experience. So I certainly wasn't an MS Project expert, but after about 2 implementations, I kind of knew where I knew where the important conversations were to have. Now, in terms of selling the value of ITBM versus MS Project, I think there's that whole like one platform kind of deal, and there's the idea that, gosh, so I'm not a salesperson, so I hope this does provide some insight. For me, what excited my customers was having a lot more of the things that make project in one spot. So they were super excited about Ridax being like right there on the project. They were super excited about many of the interfaces in ServiceNow that were kind of in more different places when they were using MS Project or Project Web App, right? I think a lot of what Project Web App does is put some of the ancillary parts of a project into a SharePoint site. So it's not like go to the project, see the stuff. It's like go to the project, follow the link, add a login, now see the stuff. So they felt like everything was in more arm's reach on ServiceNow. For my part, I think the most exciting bit about ServiceNow's ITBM is the non-project stuff, meaning the demand management aspect is killer. Like, PMOs think that demand only feeds PMO, which is false. It's 75% false because there's 4 outputs to a demand. And so demand could be a more robust, more open front end to the idea of how do we get work done at this organization. And so you can assess every demand using the power of both the PMO and operational teams. And you can kind of say, like, how big is this? Is this bigger than a breadbasket? No, it isn't. Okay, just put it in the Agile hopper. Okay, no, it is bigger than a breadbasket. We want to manage its scope, cost, and schedule. Okay, put it into the project hopper. And when you're dealing with a company that's a long time with MS Project, it tends to be a lot more rigid than that. And they're not as flexible as they think in terms of ingesting demand and getting an output. Because the PMO will be like, they'll spend a week looking at it, sometimes even more, only to find out this isn't big enough to be a project. They could have already been in a sprint. You understand what I mean?
Yep.
I hope that I kind of went a bunch of different directions there. If I didn't
Yeah,
answer your question, don't.
you gave me a very good high-level highlights. I really appreciate that answer.
Cool. I appreciate you coming on to
Thank
listen.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So next we have Mohit Kaushik. So shoot, Mohit.
Hey, hi Robert, hi Dhruv. So basically, I've started learning PPM. I mean, I'm very new to IDBM. So I started learning PPM through ServiceNow course, which they have on PPM fundamentals. I went through it. It was a 13-hour course, and it was very good. I got to know the basics of PPM, but there were some simulator practices also that I have done. But I want to work on some real-time scenarios. So how can I, get the requirements from where I can search, like as you were saying, like we should write down the scenarios on which we are working on. So basically, I want to know what could be a real-time scenario for PPM or for APM. How we can start with that. That is one question.
Yeah, you get the prize for the best question. Because there's really not a good answer for it. But this is really the secret. Answering this question is the secret sauce to doing anything on ServiceNow to a master's level. Somehow you got to find your way to simulate field scenarios without being in the field. I think what I'll do on this one is maybe start a thread in community about what are some scenarios that you've had to address in the field. And by address, I don't mean develop. So you need to hone your skills and not just build a solution to a problem, but also like, this is something I'm going to train you. This is something I'm going to try and convince you to do it the out of box way. That's what I mean by address. Okay, so there isn't a library where you can go and say, here's stuff people have asked for in an ITBM implementation. It's hard to assemble that because you'll be like in a workshop and somebody will just be uncomfortable. Like, we do resource management this way, which doesn't look at all like the way ServiceNow does it. So sometimes you don't have the luxury of being able to plan for that in advance. It's just being in the field is awesome for that reason exclusively. So I would start, like, I personally I'm actually going to start a thread in community to get to this level, but
But till then, you can go on the forum of community, ITBM forum, and just try out those questions.
Yeah, and here's another reason why that's particularly hard in ITBM, because there's a lot of different depths. Some organizations use ITBM just for the projects, not even the project tasks. They do the project tasking in Clarity or MS Project, and they just bring in the parent level project into ServiceNow. That's like maturity level 0, right? Then there's people that do projects and project tasks, but maybe just the top level tasks. Then there's people that put full on like epic upgrades in healthcare, and there's 1,000 project tasks in there. Then there's people who use projects and sub projects. Then there's people that use projects and resource management. Then there's people that do projects, resource, and cost management. Then there's people that do projects, resource, cost management integrated with time cards. Then there's people that roll that up into portfolio. You see what I mean? So we can like deconstruct 5 different layers of maturity just here. So, God, I don't know if there is a substitute for being in the field and doing it. But the thing I would do is start asking people who have been in the field, what were some scenarios that you had to deal with? I'll give you one example of mine. And ServiceNow has a solution for it. But if you want to practice your dev work in context of ServiceNow ITBM, I had a customer who used a lot of like third-party resources. Like basically everybody who was working on projects were consultants, and the company used one provider. And so they basically do this exercise where they reconcile the provider was saying, okay, last month we did this many hours. The customer would cross-reference that hours with the time card data from ServiceNow and see if there was any reconciliation that needed to get done. So what's the main need that they needed? We needed to figure out how much time was entered for a month. Now, anybody who's looked at time cards will say that sucks because time cards don't be entered by month. Time cards are entered for a week. You know what I mean? So I had to develop a time card days solution. So yeah, I'm kind of going a whole bunch of different directions there, but you're going to have to just get people who have been in the field, ask them for the scenarios that they've had to contend with. And I'm going to start a thread and community you can look out for exactly that purpose.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer, Robert. I would definitely start with community first, and
Yeah.
I can reach out to people who are into management and ask them what are their questions or what are their queries which they face while implementing it.
Don't be discouraged, man. Go boldly, because this doesn't exist. And it's hard. Okay?
Correct.
Don't be discouraged.
Yeah. And there was one more thing which I wanted to know. Like, since I don't have much idea about ITBM, so as we have heard only about APM or PPM, so is ITBM contains only APM and PPM, or there is more to it, which we can learn?
A lot more. A lot more.
Okay.
ITBM contains, like, it's way more diverse, I think, than even ITSM, because you have all those different maturity levels within projects. So it's project, like, I'll just rattle them off, like PPM, which is project. Well, actually, let's think about it this way. PM, project management. Then you have programs and portfolios, which aren't necessarily big, complex projects, but they're complex enough. Then you have cost management, budget management, two separate things. You have resource management. You have time cards. You have the agile stuff, stories. That's all packaged under ITBM. So it's very, very wide. And I haven't seen, like, there's just a wide variation of the way people deploy those component pieces of it.
Yeah.
And APM too. APM is in that list.
Okay. I guess that answered my question well. Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mohit. So next we have is Vikalp Kaushik. Hi Vikalp, can you put down your question?
Yeah, hey Dhruv, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi Robert. Yeah, Robert, the initial presentation of Vivid Chart which you started looks very impressive. If it is possible, I would just like to see with a real-time example that, for example, there is a aging report of a ticket on the basis of days we want to pull out from ServiceNow using Vivid Chart. So how it would look like?
Well, that's the secret sauce, isn't it? How it looks like is how you set it up to look like, and it's that aesthetic control that is what we solve for. We don't, like, it's not necessarily easier for us to make a report with complex conditions or parameters. What we provide is greater aesthetic control via a wider array of chart types, but also a drag and drop, what you see is what you get, aesthetic interface for building. So I can't just, like, take a random scenario and show you what the end result is.
Yes, Rob.
Do you understand? Yeah, so basically, like, the way Vivid Charts finds buyers and value within an organization is we typically look for those reports that an organization is exporting in order to get the aesthetics, the slide deck experience, the distribution, and the formulation that they want. Okay, and then we build those, and the build time could take hours, I guess. But then by doing so, the data is reliable 100% of the time because it's on ServiceNow. But also you reduce the need to export it outside the system. That's kind of a longish answer, but what I'm getting at is, again, the power isn't our condition builder is better. We use ServiceNow's condition builder. The power isn't our filters are better. Our filters are good, and comparable to ServiceNow's. So the power isn't the complexity of the report that you build. The power is the aesthetic control and distribution of the report. Probably not the answer you're looking for. If you want to talk more about it, yeah.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to talk more about it, I'm happy to I can schedule some one-on-one time for sure.
Yeah, Robert. I mean, this makes sense to me. I was just looking for an answer that what additional value it basically gives over and above the ServiceNow reporting module. So it is very clear
Yeah.
to me. It is, yeah.
Let's let's put something in context to the ITBM question, right? If anybody's worked with ITBM, one of the things you'll remember is that the project status report is awesome conceptually, but you cannot modify it and you cannot distribute it to people who are not project licensed. But what happens in a project is that you have stakeholders all across the organization who will never be ITBM licensed, but they're very interested in one or two project status reports. And so with Vivid Charts, we build them an aesthetically controllable status report, and the value is you can distribute that to people who aren't in the PMO. And it stops you from having to, we have places where every single week a PM will spend 4 hours a day exporting all their project data so they can put it into a PowerPoint or into something else so that they can distribute it to other people. So what's the value proposition? Returning a quarter of an FTE, right? Or however many hours that adds up to. That's the value prop.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Thanks for explaining.
Great question. Thank you.
So next we have is Akhtar. Akhtar, can you hear me? Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you. Quiet. Big voice.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks to Robert as well as Dhruv for taking out time having to have such discussion. I'm actually new to ITBR. I'm purely from the ITSM background, working on different tools. So it's like I started exploring this thing, ServiceNow, and it's like with self-learning, I did a certification as well. And then, but the ServiceNow is like very drastically moving. It's like it's not other tools are not at all to the mark of ServiceNow. So it's like ITBR. It's completely new to me. It's like as based on these discussions, I got to know like it's not just like uh, uh, it's just not an extension to the reporting. It's just like it's beyond that. So so just I wanted to start my learning with that. So I just asked that question. I think Mohit also replied that PPM should be the initial step to learn ITBA, right? Or is it like you suggest something else?
No, I'd say PPM is the core. You know what I mean? 95% of people who buy ITBM are using PPM to some extent. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, that's sound advice.
It's an initial step. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine. Thank you so much.
Dhruv, you still there?
Oh, sorry, I was speaking on mute. So I was saying I can't see any more questions in the chat. So if you guys have anything, just this is the right time. You can ask us, or if you want, you can ask us separately as well. But totally your call. So anyone?
Hey Dhruv, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah, hey Dhruv and hey Robert. This was really a nice session, and this was my first ServiceNow, I would say, meetup outside of my organization. So a quick question, and probably in line with what Akhtar was mentioning, right? So I started my ServiceNow platform journey a year back, and I totally relate to what Robert feels. I've been in the industry for almost 6 years, and suddenly I've got a chance to work on ServiceNow platform, and it was a complete eye opener. So, on that note, I've been with mostly working on the ITSM and I dabbled a little on ITOM, and still, ramping up my skills on the ITSM part. And I talk about skills as a developer as well as more of an integrator. So, uh, my question is it a right, or rather, is it a logical transition of skills when someone, say, with your experience, works on ITSM and ITOM? Would it be a logical transition that makes you move towards ITBM, or is the industry making you move towards it? And if yes, would it make sense for me, who's a ServiceNow enthusiast at this point of time, really get my skills overall, developed at a base on par with ITSM as well? I mean, when I ramp up my skills, should I focus on ITM, BM, and ITSM as such, or do I start with ITSM, get really good at it, and then focus on ITBM? I'm sorry if this question was lengthy and if it really doesn't make sense for this particular agenda, but that's something I would like to understand.
Okay. It's an excellent question. It's probably the most common question I get. Not with the ITBM specificity, but a lot of like, what do I do? How do I grow? It's also one that I might be the worst person in the world to ask this, because when I came up, it was like your choices are ITSM or get out of here, right? That's the only thing the platform did, ITSM and custom apps. So I watched it grow wider. Now, do I suggest you pick a random resource who wants to excel in ServiceNow? Do I suggest that they do ITSM and ITBM? Absolutely, positively not. Okay? I would suggest that you get as much of an understanding of ITSM as you're interested in, because let's just be honest here, ITSM has been ServiceNow's bread and butter for almost 2 decades, right? So almost every customer in the universe has ServiceNow ITSM engaged. So if you're in your early part of your journey and you want to maximize your ability to get any kind of work, ITSM is, let's call it your safety net. Okay? Now, you want to excel, you want to be a player in a certain space. Now you've got to figure out what the niche you're interested in. It doesn't have to be ITBM. Okay? I certainly didn't plan on ITBM being one of my niches. And if you caught me before the jobs I did on it, I'd have been like, that's not me, right? Like, I'm terrible at project. I don't understand that. It was only a couple brilliant field experiences that put me there. So if you're interested in ITBM, if you kind of like get off on it, if you like working with that, then lean in that direction. The platform is way, way wider than ever, right? So it maybe HR floats your boat. Maybe customer success management floats your boat. Maybe you're deeper in the technical stuff and you like dealing with integrations and orchestration, virtual agents. There are process areas and technologies that you can niche down on. And there's more than enough. You can like swing a dead cat and just pick one. So the answer is no. I don't suggest ITSM and ITBM unless you're interested in ITBM.
Thank you, Robert. That gives a lot of clarity to me, and
Cool.
thank you for your perspective. Thank you so much.
No problem. That's important, right? Because you guys, you can't do it like I did it. You must not do it like I did it. You don't have the time. So if you want to have further discussions about that, and this goes for anybody here, further discussions on what should I do next, where do I fit, do not hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to have that deeper level conversation with anybody here.
Thank you, Robert.
So, Christians, just to add on that, it's just platform is quite wide. You just need to find which area suits you most, which area excites you, and most importantly, which has the opportunities. Once you figure out that, you just need the zeal to learn. Rest will fall in place. It's just that you need to see what you want. Rest you can do.
Yeah, Dhruv, I think from this meet, I got that clear picture in my head because I come from, not to drag it further, just a quick brief. I come from a little monitoring tools kind of, and dabbled a little bit on ITSM prior to my ServiceNow exposure. So I think ITOM has been a good fit for me. So maybe I'll focus on that. But yeah, I think I got that clarity with this call. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, you're welcome, man.
You're welcome. So let's take the another question from Madhu Sudan. So first thing, Madhu, thanks for answering in the chat. It's really great. You're helping folks out. So now, what's
Hey,
your question?
Drew, I don't know whether we are running out of time. I just don't want to take more than the allotted time. Is it okay to go with my question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hey, Robert. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm just currently performing a Scrum Master role in the ServiceNow development on other platforms and also ITBM. So, as an individual and all the folks in the call, what would be my growth journey in ITBM space? I'm again my limited exposure to ServiceNow. If I become interested and want to pursue further levels of ITBM exposure, what do you see as a persona for a person to grow?
Okay, so you're a Scrum Master now. Did I hear that right?
Yes, Scrum Master for the ServiceNow development team. Yep.
Oh, okay. So you're in charge of making sure that the sprints get on point for the work that's being done on the ServiceNow platform, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways. So if you enjoy that work, if you enjoy the management of the like getting the stuff done, okay, then there's the obvious choice of just going farther up that agile stack, right? Being a product owner or what have you, taking on a wider scope of applications and just being like the best Scrum Master / product owner that you can be. But like if you want a ServiceNow specific answer, then you kind of have to realize that it's changing jobs, right? It's fundamentally changing that which you do. And so I guess I would like if I was in your shoes and I wanted to get more into ServiceNow implementations, or have a more consultative presence, or a more kind of like community amplified presence about who am I and what do I do, I would probably leverage. This is me being you, right? I would leverage my Scrum Master experience because you have there's a question earlier. What scenarios do I deal with? You deal with all the scenarios for Scrum Masters, don't you? So you understand that world, right? So what I would do is go get somebody to take you deep on how the SAFe framework works in ServiceNow, as well as the kind of like the release sprint story, that whole paradigm. Get them to take you as deep as they can, and you will form a matrix of like where ServiceNow's mechanics align and does not align with your experience as a Scrum Master. Like, I really love these parts, I hate these parts, right? And so you have a special place where you can reconcile the parts that you know Scrum Masters will hate, and you can either provide solutions or consultation to make that smoother.
That is an excellent advice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you. On the other hand, I'm also a dev, so it's like I'm playing the dual role of a dev and also a Scrum Master. So I do regular development on ITBM and the GRC and some of ITSM. So keeping my hands dirty too, but again keeping at the process level too. So that was a very good insight, Robert. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome.
So thanks, Manu. So Daniel has asked us requested us for one more question. So Daniel, it's all up.
Yeah, I have one more question, please. I think this question is for both of you, Dhruv and Robert. I would like to know from your perspective overall, what value do you see getting and maintaining ServiceNow certifications, considering the fact of how expensive it is to get them and maintain them, especially with the new rules and regulations that has just come out. And if we're going to focus, if you're going to look at like a crystal ball, which niche areas do you think newcomers like us can focus on that will be beneficial to us? At least we can get jobs, we can flourish a little bit, because it seems everybody's coming into service now at this point in time.
Yep. I got answers for both of those. There's two questions, right? Number one, what's my take on the value of the certifications? Did I adequately repeat that, or?
Yeah, as in, is it something we can we do without it? Is it something that we really?
Yeah. Okay. Can we do without it? No. I would say no. You can't do without. Well, shoot. There's a bunch of different answers for this. I'll try and not take up a half an hour just answering this, okay? But if you anticipate being in a consultative job in the ServiceNow ecosystem, get the cert. If you work for somebody as ServiceNow's, if you're I work for a company, not a consultative one, I work for, I don't know, Southwest Airlines or Cargill or something like that as their ServiceNow person, then you don't need the cert because you're already there and you just do what you need to do, right? Now, if you work for a company like that, exploit the education programs available to you, talk to your HR department, and get the certs. Certs don't hurt, okay? But there was a second, the certs only benefit you, okay? But there's a second element of that was purely financial, because the more certs I have, the more reconciliations I have to do, more cert maintenance. So I don't believe that more certs on ServiceNow is always better. Okay, and that goes back to the question I just finished answering: is where do you want to work? I know for a fact I will probably never go after the HR cert, because I just don't I don't work there enough. That's not where, none of those fish bite my bait. Why should I upgrade my bait? So would I go after, I personally, I go after the ITBM cert. I go after the PA cert, because those are areas I enjoy. And if I ever just went purely consultative, or if I wanted to subcontract, people are probably going to ask me about, where's your cert? Now, Daniel, I've been on your LinkedIn profile. You have a lot of certs, right? You kind of like a cert collector. Just be really cutthroat about what you actually want to do. What you actually want to do. And don't assume that you have to go wide to maximize your attractiveness to a employer or somebody who's going to hire you on contract. You don't necessarily have to go after every type of work. Go after the work that you're good at and passionate about, and certify there. Don't certify all over the place. So that's question one. Question two: what, crystal ball, which ones do I think have the most oomph behind them? And at this point, I'd say again, does not matter. There's too many of them to worry about that, right? It's really a matter of, and plus, I see different things than you guys see, and that's not necessarily a good thing for me. You guys might have better intel than I do about what's actually going on out there in the world. I run Vivid charts all day long, right? I'm not in the field with a ton of clients. I have a very narrow, I talk to 5 or 6 new customers a week about what they're doing in regards with the reporting. Y'all are the ones that are out in the field, right? Y'all are the ones in your own company seeing what's up. So trust your own instincts there. Don't necessarily rely on my crystal ball. And then keep your mind open. Understand that there are technical avenues and process avenues to niche down in. Okay?
Yeah, just to add on, considering the job market, okay, so at least you should have admin one. It was free recently. I hope that campaign will come again. Second thing, just focus, if you are working, as Robert mentioned, if you are working for a consultant company like Cognizant, Deloitte, TCS, just exploit their program, because ServiceNow is offer some good discounts to partners. And I can tell you about my organization, constant trainings are going on. So I'm just taking advantage of them. Important is the skill that you have, right? I mean, resume, the certificate will help you just shortlist your resume, okay? But at the end of the day, it's your skill that matters.
Yeah. The other thing too, I would encourage is, and this is a meta lesson. Okay, take what I'm telling you about this specific question and apply it to everything you do in ServiceNow. Okay, this is secret sauce. Why do you look at certs in a cost paradigm and not a value paradigm? Right. So on the surface, you look at, here's the and I had this problem myself. Right. On the surface, I had, why should I pay essentially $4,000 to take the 2 performance analytics courses so I can get certified? $4,000 is a decent amount of money. You could buy half a car for that,
Yes.
right? So you look at it, you're like, that was $4,000. But I was sitting there with a $50,000 opportunity that required me to have the cert. So it's to some extent, it's nature. Like, this is the way nature works. Sometimes you have to pay for the opportunity to play. It's cutthroat, right? You got to be wise in terms of which of the ones you pick, like which work you want to go after. But you can't think of it in terms of cost only. You have to consider value. And if you look at something and all you can see is cost, maybe that's not the one you want to go after, right? So now, everybody else who's been listening on that, take that lesson and apply it everywhere else on ServiceNow. When you're in front of your customers, like internal or external, right? People are always asking you for stuff, or you're having good ideas, and it's up to you to convince them to spend their energy and resources on this thing you're proposing, right? So they're going to think in terms of cost. Get them to think in terms of value. That's your secret sauce one for today.
That's great, man. So just one more thing to add on the things that ServiceNow is changing. So certification stuff is changing a lot. So we have to wait for Paris release. Certainly there is one maintenance cost per year, maintenance cost for all the certs, not for one. That is not per certificate base. That is for all the certs, the deltas we give. And as far I know, ServiceNow is planning to bring on most of their trainings as on demand. Like currently they have PPM on demand. They're planning for CSM by December, I guess, this December 2020. So just have a check on that as well. I mean, it's all up to you. It's all upon the demand in the market. It's the value base, as Robert mentioned.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess we don't have any more questions. So I'll just wrap up with the last slide. Okay. So after this, I would be sharing one feedback link and the link for this recorded session. And if you have any queries, just email on that, and please do fill that feedback form because it will help us to improve as well as to decide the next topic. Okay. So my preference would be on VS Code, but let's see what we get from the audience. Okay.
Guys, thanks so much for all the awesome questions. And Dhruv, again, I'm really honored that you picked me to do this. And hope you guys have a great Sunday night and a great start to next week.
Robert, it was my pleasure to have you here. And frankly speaking, when I think of ITBM, I saw the feedback on the first session that people wants to learn about ITBM, get the stuffs rolling. So the first name that come to my mind was yours, and it was really great that you just said yes. Like, I was not expecting that to come that easy, but yeah, thank you very much for enlightening us with your thoughts and with your experience.
Again, my pleasure, guys. Have a good night.
Good night, guys. Have a great day, and
Thank you.
Keep looking out for the space for more info, the feedback form. Thank you very much.